Hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. Some people are calling it World War Tweet, with President Trump responding to Kim Jong-un on Twitter, which is kind of silly, saying, "You've got a button, but I've got a bigger button than you do."
It's more powerful.
Yeah.
But there was some good news from Korea today, as well as the North reopened its long-closed border hotline with the South. Dale Hurd brings us the story.
Call it the battle of the nuclear buttons between President Trump and the leader of North Korea. But it's no joke. In his New Year's Day speech, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un said, "The U.S. should know that the nuclear button is on my desk. The entire U.S. mainland is within our nuclear strike range." President Trump responded on Twitter, "Will someone from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him that I too have a nuclear button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works." President Trump doesn't actually have a physical nuclear button. He has a bag containing what's called the nuclear football, but that didn't stop Trump from teasing Kim. Despite the nuclear threat in his New Year's Day speech, North Korean experts saw important symbolism in the color of Kim's gray suit, indicating the North was softening or wanted something. And sure enough, the North wants to send a delegation to the Winter Olympics in South Korea next month and open a cross-border hotline with South Korea.
North Korea can talk with anyone they want, but the U.S. is not going to recognize it or acknowledge it until they agree to ban the nuclear weapons that they have.
And while President Trump sounded open to the possibility of an inter-Korean dialogue, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs offered an alarming assessment of the nuclear standoff.
We're actually closer, in my view, to a nuclear war with North Korea and in that region than we've ever been. And I just don't see I don't see the opportunities to solve this diplomatically at this particular point.
And at the same time, another rogue state seeking to become a nuclear power, Iran, is still being rocked by protests. Iranian state media aired footage of pro-government demonstrations in cities across the country after a week of protest over the country's poor economy that have left more than 20 dead.
The UN must speak out. In the days ahead, we will be calling for an emergency session, both here in New York and at the Human Rights Council in Geneva. We must not be silent. The people of Iran are crying out for freedom.
The president has several key domestic issues on his plate in this election year, but both North Korea and Iran could also become dominant concerns for the president and his team. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, I hate to differ with the distinguished former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, but I don't think we're going to have a nuclear war. I don't think that God Almighty is going to allow that to happen to this world. I think there are too many other important things to be done spiritually, and I just don't think that's in the Lord's plan for this world. But if he has to take out Kim Jong-un in order to accomplish that, that's what'll happen. But I just don't think we're going to have a nuclear war. Well, President Trump has a warning for another international group as well, and that is the Palestinian Authority, the PA. John Jessup has that.
Well, Pat, the president apparently threatened to cut off American aid to the Palestinians in a pair of tweets Tuesday, saying we pay the Palestinians hundreds of millions of dollars a year and get no appreciation or respect. They don't even wait to negotiate a long overdue peace treaty with Israel. You'll remember Palestinians quickly protested when Trump said he would move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem and recognize the city as the Israeli capital. Trump explained that the U.S. was simply addressing reality, that Jerusalem has been Israel's capital both in modern and ancient times. Well, a powerful winter storm is bringing snow and extremely cold temperatures from Florida all the way to Maine. The winter weather could hit areas that hardly ever see flurries, much less inches of snow. And the National Weather Service predicts a mix of snow and freezing rain for today into tomorrow.
Can't even describe it. It's unbearable. I'm wearing 2 hats, 2 pairs of gloves. I don't know.
I think this is the coldest winter ever.
Savannah, Georgia hasn't had accumulating snow in nearly 8 years, but up 2 inches of both snow and sleet could hit the city and surrounding area. The storm is expected, Pat, to drop a foot or more snow in parts of New England.
hey, you haven't had, I was in, I think, Duluth, Minnesota, it was minus 25. Up in New Hampshire, it was regularly minus 20. And I traveled all around in that area in those wonderful days of politicking. And yes, it was cold, but you got used to it. I went around in a sports coat, and I didn't have any problem.
It's hard to shake hands when it's that cold, isn't it?
Well, I had, I'll tell you, out in Iowa, it got, I think it was someplace called Spirit Lake. It was minus 60-some. And, you know, you go out in the cold, and it's just one of those things you get used to. I was a jogger in those days. Every day I had to do some jogging, so cold or not, you just do it. And it was fun. It was nice.
Well, we've got snow coming here tonight.
Well, I understand. You see the television, storm warning, and then you look, where's the storm? Well, it's supposed to come tomorrow. Well, we'll see. But it's warm here. You know, we're not having any trouble. John?
Well, Pat, the Department of Homeland Security has warned that terrorists could try to launch attacks with new technology. One potential tactic, using armed drones. CBN's national security correspondent Eric Rosales brings us that story.
Imagine this baseball stadium behind me filled with fans. Now imagine an armed drone filled with chemical weapons flies overhead, releasing it, killing them. It's a horrifying scenario that may not be too far-fetched after the latest warning from Homeland Security, which suggests terrorists to start using armed drones to carry out attacks. According to the DHS, there's been an uptick in terrorist interest for using unmanned aerial systems as weapons to drop chemicals.
You can take a quadcopter, off-the-shelf unmanned aerial vehicle that you can purchase for $99 at Radio Shack or Best Buy or even on Amazon, equip a small container on it, put an automated device on side just by using a trigger that you can get for 99 cents at a hardware store, fly it over a civilian area, and thereby you have a roving, chemical, unmanned aerial weapon.
Greg Roman leads the Middle East Forum, a research center working to defend our country from threats in that region. Roman says ISIS already uses drones on the battlefield to drop grenades and other explosives. Now Homeland Security is also concerned about drones targeting commercial jetliners. The DHS bulletin states unmanned aircraft systems highlight sustained concern regarding threats against commercial aviation and air cargo, including explosives, poisons, or toxins. Airports across the country already deal with close calls between drones and jetliners taking off and coming in for landings.
There is this balance between civil liberties and national security, but I don't think there's anywhere written in the Constitution that someone has the ability to operate a drone with unfettered access without regulation.
There is some concern regarding the regulations regarding drones, even in the private sector. First attacking commercial airlines, but then what about other government buildings? You know, what about churches? You know, what about people's homes? So it would not just stop at a plane.
The big picture is that Homeland Security's fight is shifting, ever adapting against ISIS, who is losing ground on the battlefield, but continues to have branches throughout the world. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Eric. Well, in political news, Orrin Hatch, the longest-serving Republican in the Senate, won't be back for another term. In a video message, Utah's senior senator announced he will not seek re-election next year. That opens the door for a run by Mitt Romney, whom Hatch has courted in the past to become his successor. Hatch's decision could be a blow for President Trump, who will be losing a staunch ally, as opposed to Romney, who may not be as supportive. Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders says the president is sad to see Hatch go. And Senator Hatch said he's always been a fighter, but he's added that every good fighter knows when to hang up the gloves. And Pat, as you know, he served as the chairman of several key committees, including the Judiciary and most recently the Finance Committee.
Well, he played a key role in that tax cut bill, and I think it's important. But we'll miss him. He came down here, and, you know, we were in our chapel on our knees praying together. He's a great guy, and I'm sad to see him leave the Senate. He's been a real strong senator and a chairman and a voice for reason and righteousness. He's a good man. And, you know, it's amazing. Mitt Romney's coming on the scene, and he called the president a con man and a few other nasty things. So we'll see if he'll come together. But Mitt was a friend, too. I asked Mitt, I said, how in the world did you pay off that debt for those Winter Olympics out there in Utah? He said, well, I just went to 80 people and asked for $1 million each, and that paid the bill.
Oh, just like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mitt was a very brilliant businessman, and I don't know, he and Trump didn't exactly sit too well together, you know.
How do you think he'd do in the Senate? Would he vote along party lines?
Oh, sure he will. Of course he will. But, you know, he's I don't know, the people in Utah have got to decide what they want, but he's certainly, I mean, he's a Mormon bishop. Did you know that?
A bishop?
He's the Bishop of New England, yeah. And so the people who are Mormon out in Utah will obviously support him. It'll be interesting, but anyhow, all I can say right now, I'm sad that Senator Hatch is leaving because he has been a good man and is a good friend. And I know the nation will be diminished because of his absence. John?
Well, Pat, it's a new year, and after diving into holiday meals and treats, many people are making resolutions to lose weight, but most of them fail. Experts say one key reason is people try to lose too much too fast, rather than simply working at losing weight gradually over time. They say people need to form healthy habits so they can exercise regularly or at least stay active. And they add people need to avoid the types of sugary desserts they had during the holidays and cut out wrong things from their diets like processed foods, along with sugar and bad carbohydrates. Pat, all sound advice that I think we've heard right here before on this program.
Over and over and over again, we've been singing off that tune, but the thing that people don't realize is you take a dose of antibiotics and you kill the gut flora. You take certain other medications, you kill the gut flora. And if we don't have the appropriate flora in our intestines, the food we eat will turn to fat, and we'll have a hunger and a craving for certain foods. And those little bacteria, you know, you hear about probiotics and so forth. When you have them, you're a lot healthier. And just remember, a dose of antibiotics will kill those things for as much as a couple of years. So it's very important. That's
years. Wow.
A couple of years. I mean, and you know, the thing about babies, they hit them with antibiotics on a regular basis. You know, the little child has got an infection. Let's give him a dose of antibiotics. Well, you do that, and it kills the intestinal flora, which weakens the immune system, which in turn leads to this overweight. So anyhow, that again is my gift to you on this program. Beware of the stuff that doctors are going to give you on a regular basis. If you can possibly avoid it, avoid it. And if you have to take antibiotics, take those very powerful probiotics that have in the billions of units, and that'll. Do you know that?
And yogurt, maybe. I don't know.
Well, yogurt's okay, but you know.
But those probiotics, yeah.
The real powerful. They've got billions and billions of units, but you need to balance. If you have to take antibiotics, those probiotic pills are important, very important. Okay.